I was in a church in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I was doing a training for the church on having healthy evangelistic conversations. And at one point during kind of a Q&A period, the senior leader there, he says to me, "You are not only teaching us to do evangelism that is effective, you are also teaching us to respect the humanity of the other person." And that response really resonated with me because that is at the heart of what I was trying to do. One of the things I sometimes say, a little bit in jest, but a little bit serious, is we're essentially sneaking in the gospel through evangelism training. That feels kind of offensive. Churches are teaching the gospel, right? But here's what I really mean by that. Usually if I go somewhere and I'm helping do equipping for a church, it's the practices, the skills that we're seeking to teach, and that's a lot of the motivation for having us come. But one of the things that is really, really important, I think, to the equipping, to the training, and how to reach out. One of the things that is so important that we're bringing is also a gospel ethic of how we treat the outsider to the church or to Christian faith. And so I think that's really important. And I was in another training at another church, another part of the country, and someone asked me a question. It's a little awkward, but they essentially it was sincere. They essentially said, How do we deal with the differences, and maybe some of the personal distaste, for other people's attitudes, behavior, choices, that's different from theirs." And it's a reasonable question. I mean, anybody, no matter what your worldview, your background, no matter where you're at, wherever you are, you might have feelings about choices and attitudes that other people have. And so it was a sincere question. But my response was, and still is, I I don't think we are called to be constantly offended. I think it's normal to be grieved or to feel empathy and compassion or to be saddened by what we see around us if we just feel like that's off, from our perspective. I think that's okay, that's normal, but at the same time I don't think we're supposed to, go and force people into something that doesn't match with even where their allegiance is. I don't think that we're called to be offended and to be in a constant state of offense. I think we're called to have compassion and empathy. I do believe we're called to point to Jesus as King and to invite people to consider Him, and consider being part of God's family in that way. I believe all that is definitely true and real for us. But I don't think that's the same as being in a constant state of offense. And yet, sometimes Christians, church people, you take us outside of church and a conversation about a movie or sports or, some kind of current events or something on the job or whatever the subject, we can have pretty normal conversations. But as soon as something spiritual, something Bible, something religious comes up, sometimes we can get a little weird and like we're using vocabulary now that needs a dictionary, and we just kind of put it into another gear. And in a lot of ways, we need to learn how to have just conversations about faith and about the reality of Jesus, and things we believe that are important in the Bible, and the hope that we have, the conviction is there, and in this story and these teachings, and that we need to talk about these things in ways that are normal and not weird, and and not feeling always defensive. God can take care of himself just fine. Um, and so at the end of the day, I think it's really important that Christian people we just learn how to be normal again. I was doing some interviewing a while back, doing some research for something academic I was doing, and I was talking to someone that had started a network of house churches out in California, is in the Bay Area, and that's what he said to me, and it's always stuck. He just said, "Man, Christians have got to learn how to be normal." And he was kind of talking about how as they started to come together in a more kind of family-like atmosphere, doing these house churches, how much it was a challenge just to learn how to be in relationship and be family, like that, and I think I've seen that in ministry too. I think sometimes we get all the religious stuff down and we forget how to connect with people in very normal ways. And I think at the end of the day, our Christian witness will end up being a lot stronger if we are, yes, bold in being a follower of Jesus. Absolutely. Let's not step back from that, but be bold in such a way that is compassionate, empathetic, respectful, not forceful, and, normal. And so we just really hope that we can learn how to be normal as Christians. So we really want to help move the needle as much as we can for the church today in North America. One way we're doing that is we do training, we do equipping in local churches. We're not coming in doing kind of here's how to share the gospel napkin presentation. If those are helpful, and sometimes they really can be, but if those are helpful, you can find them on YouTube. That's great. We don't need to do a training on that. Those presentations are out there. What we're doing is really helping church members learn to engage in the everyday conversations and talk about faith in very normal ways with people. Also, we took a lot of the training that we do and we put it together in a book, Jumpstart Healthy Evangelism, and that has come out on Amazon. And so that's also a resource that is available as well. And so we just want to make sure these things are on your radar because we want to help. Well, we want to help bring change. The status quo is not working for us here in the church North America. And so we hope that these things will be helpful as we all move forward together.